Howdy everyone, dankydrank here, and today we're going to be learning about if statements and expressions and conditions. So guys, stick around, I'll be back in a minute. Alrighty, so let's get started here. I'm going to delete all this jabber, although that is a computer science term, I probably shouldn't use that here. All of this junk, well not really junk, but about variables, just so we have some more space. So bye-bye to that. Alrighty, there we go. So let's start a new chapter here. What are we going to talk about today, guys? Let me move my microphone here. Is if statements and conditions. So if statements. So what is an if statement? Well, an if statement allows you to check for something before executing a block of code. So, how is this useful? Well, let's say I had some sort of a program that I only wanted it to run once. And it was in a loop, and you guys don't know about do-while loops, but we'll get to that eventually. So let's say you had some sort of thing where, actually, let's do this. When we're going to have a loop here in which even numbers are going to have the word even printed in front of them, and odd numbers are going to have the word odd printed in front of them. So we need a while loop here, of course, and we don't know what the condition is going to be yet. But actually, let's go ahead and define the condition. So we're going to create a new integer. So int I equals 0, and we're going to do while I is less than, let's go, 200. And okay, so now we're going to loop over I, and we're going to need to add to I every time we loop. So we're going to loop over I, and we're going to look for the values that are less than 200. Actually, I'll do less than or equal to, and I'll start this at 1. So how do we tell if a number is even or odd in Java? Well, there's a handy little thing. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. I believe it's like modular. I'll put a little text title on the right-hand side of the screen right now with that. But that's how we're going to be able to determine that I is either even or odd. So let's see here. In order to do that, we need to write if. And basically, when we write an if here, all of the code that we get that we put in the brackets here will be run based on the condition that we provide in the parentheses, to the right of the if. So, if condition, then we're going to add to I. But what should this condition be? It's the same as this type of condition up here, except we don't want it to be the same as this one. It's just the same type. It's an expression is what the technical term is. So, in order to tell if a number is even or odd, what you can do is you can divide it by 2 and find the remainder. So if you divide it by 2 and the remainder is 1, then it's an odd number. If you divide it by 2 and the remainder is 0, then it's an even number. So how you do this in Java, there's actually a thing that calculates the remainder, and that is this sign, the percentage sign. And I believe it's module, I'm not sure. Again, that should have been on the right hand side. So I'll just call it %sign. So if I %sign 2, so what you're doing here is you're saying, okay, if you do I %sign 2, then basically you're saying, okay, I want to divide I by 2 and find the remainder from that. So examples 10 %sign 2 would be 0. Here, I'll make this a little bit bigger comment. All right, so and then we can do, say, 12% sign. Oops, not percent. That's a question mark. 7. How many times does 7 go into 12? It goes in once, of course, and the remainder is 5. And yeah, that's how it works. So let's go ahead and do something with that. So I'm going to move this right here up to the top. So, oops. Let me delete that. Formatting. Junk. Hate formatting. Okay. Asterisk. Asterisk. Okay. So, now that we know that, this can be used to determine even or odd. So, now that we know that, we can check to see if something's even or odd. So, if I module 2, or whatever it is, if I set sign 2 equals, and equals, remember, is how you check if the two things are equal as opposed to a single equals sign. And if that equals 0, that means it's even. So we need to print out even. So we're going to do even, and then we're going to print out I. So to do that, you can just end your just quotes. Go ahead and put a colon in the space, and then plus I, and then the other part of this. So else statements go with these, go with if statements, and they run if the if condition is false. So now we can put our else down here. Else does not need parentheses because it doesn't have a condition. So we can do system.out.println odd colon quotation mark plus I, and then add to I again, because if it goes in here, it's not going to go in here, and if it goes in here, it's not going to go in here. So now if we run this, it's going to say even, odd, even, odd, even, odd. You get the point. But we have a lot of duplicate code here. This is big, this is messy. This can be done much shorter. So how are we going to do that? Well, first thing is if we have the same code at the end of each if statement, we can just cut it out from them and put it at the bottom of the if else. So if we had I++ in the if and in the else, we can just write it at the bottom of both. Because they'll go, okay, if I %sign 2 equals 0, then we're going to print out even plus I. Okay, now we're going to come down here, I++, good, back up to the while loop. And if it goes in the else, it's going to print out odd, and then I, and it's going to go, okay, I++, back up to the while loop. Is it less than or equal to 200? Yeah, so on. Now, another thing is if you have while loops, if statements, any kind of loop, or any sort of thing in Java that might require brackets normally, that's not a method or a class, you can do this. If you only are running a single line of code, you can get rid of the brackets. But that only works if you're doing a single line of code, and the indentation will kind of help you out with that. Like right here, if I were to print something here, like that, for example, compile this, doesn't work. So we can go ahead and get rid of these braces on the else as well, and you'll see that this works in the exact same way. It says, okay, if I %sign 2 is equal to 0, which means it's even, we're going to print out even. If otherwise, we're going to print out odd. I++, back to the beginning, repeat until I is less than, or until I is greater than 200. There we go. And pretty much any condition that we use, whether it's in an if statement or in a while loop, they're interchangeable and they're called expressions. So if conditions and loop conditions are called expressions, and they can be used in all conditional, or in all places that require conditions. Alright, so now we have that. There's one more thing I want to show you, and that is the else if. So basically with else here, this is if it's not I module 2 equals 0 or I % 2, it would go into this here, or if it is, it's going to go in here. Otherwise, no matter what, it's going to go in here. Now, you might be thinking, oh, well, you can't just do if or some other thing like I module 2 equals 1. I'm going to keep calling it module. I don't know why. I think that's the right word. Equals 1. Then you're going to print it out. But this right here has issues because, not necessarily in this case, but say you're running something that is along the lines of this. If I is less than 10, we're going to print out I, and then let's say we're going to do if I is greater than 10, system.out.println large. And then in here, we're going to add to I. Actually, so we don't need these here. It's only one line. What's going to end up happening here? I'll show you what happens. We end up stuck in a while loop because what? Actually, here, I'll just do if I is less than 10, less than or equal to 10. There we go. Let's do I is greater than or equal to 10. Beautiful. So let's compile this again. And if we scroll back up in the console here, make this a little bit bigger. This goes back a long ways. Alright, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Large. And, well, we don't want that because if you look up here, we are adding right here. We theoretically want this to go back to the beginning of the loop. Say there was code up here, we'd be missing that if we were to just instantly do that. We want it to go in to this if statement and only, or this whole block, and only select one if statement. Else if. And it's not really going to have quite as large of an effect now, but when you say else if, this is saying, okay, if it's not this one, we're going to check this one. If it's not this one, we're going to check the next one. But it's only going to run one, so if it hits one of these, it's going to go away. But if you have another if down here, it recognizes this is one giant if statement, so if, else if, okay. Then it goes into another block of ifs, and we don't want that to happen. So else if basically will not, for each if condition that else if is used, it will prevent that condition from selecting multiple blocks in the if statement. So that's what that's for. Guys, I hope you had a good time watching this. I'm really excited to get to some more interesting stuff in the future, but this is very important. You need to get this down, and remember that all conditions can be used in ifs, and all conditions can be used in whiles as long as they're Boolean conditions, expressions. Boolean expressions is the proper term. So guys, if you are having difficulty with any of this, please feel free to leave me a comment. Make sure you guys follow me on Twitter for updates on videos and just what's going on in my life. And guys, I hope you have a fantastic day. Peace.